Well, we received the Atlas Minnesota Corn Processors corn syrup tank car, and happens to be a number that I already have, but I'm going to do the quick and easy way of renumbering this tonight after I open it up. Pearl City Trains out of Indiana is where I found this, and it was a really good price, and they shipped it out pretty much right away, and it's still factory sealed, so we'll dig into that here in just a minute. We got it open and it's still sealed, so I'm gonna take my X-Acto and cut through there. And the horn hook couplers still in the original package. I've been saving those just in the little pocket that Atlas has in the foam like that, but the really nice thing about these Atlas cars is that they come with metal wheels. One of the downsides is that I don't like the Accumate couplers because of the clamshell design, but those are easily fixed with some KD number 5s. To get the car out of the styrofoam, however, I usually end up removing the styrofoam and pushing it out through the back, through the holes that are molded into that foam insert, just to keep from breaking some of the delicate details that are applied on the car. So I've got the foam insert out with the car in here, and if we flip it over, there's a couple of these holes. So with the plastic lid, I'll just slowly work that car out and try to avoid from breaking or bending any of those delicate grabs. Twisting it out can be kind of a challenge, as the trucks get hung up sometimes on that foam. Got the end a little bit popped out, but those thankfully just pop back in. So one thing when I'm working on these tank cars, because of all the delicate underbody detail, is I try to use one of these foam cradles while I'm working on them. The only thing that I think I'm going to run into with this, because I'm going to take away the center part of the 8 to make it look like the 3 here. The one detail that I noticed is the font. The 3 has the vertical breaks in that digit, but it doesn't have the horizontal here like the 8 does. Normally I'll make a slice with the number 11 X-Acto through that printing and kind of give it an edge so that as I scrape it away, I don't take too much back on that number. The 8 on this car already has those breaks in the font, so it should help from taking that away. I'll try to set the camera up a little bit better in order to show you. So hopefully I've got the camera set up the right way here so that we can see how I'm doing this. Take a minute to look at the model, and you'll see that the number is printed on the top of the car, both sides, and also on the ends. So 5 times on this car. It's not too big of a job. The ends are usually the easiest because they're small, so if you make a slight mistake, they're not quite as noticeable. So I guess we'll get into this. I always try to make sure that I'm holding on to the car, not too firmly, because I don't want to break any of that detail, but I'll go along with the X-Acto and I'll look at the digit here that I'm trying to duplicate with the 3. I'll come along here and see where that center part of the digit comes in. I'll try to find about that spot on the 8 and just gently bring that X-Acto knife down, and you'll kind of cut through that printing with your blade in order to give yourself that edge to mimic it. Now, working slowly, one of the things that you'll have to do is using the very end of your knife. You're going to want to kind of brace your hand on the car, trying to avoid that ladder, and just take your time and slowly work away that paint and try to work from the line that you cut out, and eventually you'll get all the way through and it will look a lot closer to a 3 than an 8. I might go back and touch that up like with some white Tamiya paint, maybe on a pin or the end of the X-Acto blade. Not quite sure, but we'll see how it goes. Okay, successfully made that scrape away, and it didn't do too bad of making it look like a 3. Depending on how the rest of them go, I may just leave that the way it is with the gaps across the horizontal here on that number, and maybe after I weather it, it won't be as noticeable. So I'll go around the car and do the other 4, and we'll come back to that. I flipped it over and I did the other side here, and it went pretty well, just like the other side. The one thing I did notice on this generation of Atlas car is that this one is considerably easier to scrape away that printing than the other cars that I have from like one of the previous runs. In comparison to the Walthers cars that I also have, the Atlas cars generally come off easier than the Walthers car. They must use a different type of pad printing. Top of the car, being that I'm right-handed, it's a little bit easier to hold it like this with it off and pull away. I have tried doing it the opposite and trying to scrape it away to the left, but I find that I have a really difficult time doing that, and I don't know why. Is definitely a smaller font and printing on the end of the car typically are. It's the same process. This is one of the reasons why I prefer to use a fresh number 11 X-Acto blade, is specifically to get on this smaller font. The biggest challenge is with the underbody detail of these cars. It's really easy to put your thumb on one of these pieces and break that, or loosen it, because a lot of it just kind of hangs there. So I'll do my best to do that. The number one key to doing this type of renumbering process is just take your time and just make sure that you're able to do it without rushing. And in the right light you can kind of see the scratches, but it really doesn't affect it too much. You won't really notice that too much after it's been dull coated and a little bit of weathered. One thing that you've probably seen me do is we get part of the way and then I wipe it away. The natural oils on your skin will kind of freshen up, or the plastic underneath that pad. That way it just helps clean it off a little bit so you can see where you're going. Here's the other end of the car that I just finished doing, and this one turned out pretty good, similar to the other side. Again, I didn't really pioneer this. This has been a technique that's been out there in the hobby for quite some time. I've just found it to be one of the easier ways, renumbering some of these duplicate road numbers, since I wanted to have a corn syrup train to run at my local club. I know a lot of you are probably thinking that well, this is fine and dandy in HO, but what about N, because that's my primary scale. Good news is that you can also do this in N. You can do this in any other scale. I've also done it in G on some of my BNSF reefer cars from USA Trains. It just takes a little bit more patience so that you don't start digging through the factory applied paint. But HO scale and N scale are the two most forgiving scales that I have found where this technique really works. A little bit of weathering or even just some flat clear on these cars really makes a big difference. One thing that I did want to touch on is this is how I've been keeping track of my Minnesota corn processors tank cars. I've been writing them down as I get them, and by the manufacturer, the reporting marks, the road number. I've been having a pretty complete list. These Walthers DMIX cars are the older run, but the Walthers Proto that I recently got from my local hobby shop are really, really nice cars. It's just the older Walthers cars with all the added details on them, and they're considerably heavier. The very next thing that I do to all these tank cars when I receive them is I replace the couplers with KD number 5s. The Walthers Proto cars came with the Proto Max couplers, and I find those to be really good couplers for my club. I don't ever have any problems with them, so there's no real point in updating those or swapping them over to a KD, or at least nothing that I have found yet. One of the things that I like to do is use 2 of those foam cradles that I talked about earlier. These foam cradles are actually N-scale by Bowser, I believe, but these work really well working on tank cars because the slots are narrower, or at least that's what I've found. Where it helps to have 2 of these is that you can split them up so that the dome area of the tank car with these railings, each foam cradle, you can kind of push it together and support that car a little bit easier. This is just one of those handy little tricks that I've kind of picked up on my own. As you can see, I've got my KD number 5s, and I'm not using the whisker couplers only because I tend to have issues running at my club where the couplers catch, because we have a lot of grades and up and down motion on our club track. So I have found that the number 5's little copper spring there has been working really, really well on all of the tank cars from Atlas, Intermountain, and Walthers that I have upgraded since I've gotten into doing this corn syrup train. I'm up to 19 tank cars. It'd be kind of fun to have a whole fleet, but I'm not quite ready to and renumbering the cars with decals quite yet. I'm also doing the corn syrup train in N scale as well for the layout operations that I'm still trying to figure out how I'm going to work those in. There we have it. Here is the completed Atlas Minnesota Corn Processors corn syrup tank car that renumbered with the scratch out method and added KD number 5s. Nice little details as far as the train line with the nice grab irons that are around this model and the undercar details that we applied at the factory. Metal wheels make it for a nice roller. Might have to go through and glue up those ends on the tank. This process wasn't too bad. Usually do one of these cars in about 10 minutes from start to finish, but with doing the camera and the video it took a little bit longer. But the key is definitely to take your time and have fun. If you mess up, no big deal. You can still grab the micro scale decals and use some of that super clean or Solvaset and renumber those, and you'll only get better with practice. So that's it. That's how I renumber, or I have found to renumber, duplicate cars in HO and N scale. It works really well for me. If somebody's got a different technique, I'd love to hear it in the comments. or post it up on the post on the Facebook page, and hopefully we'll follow up with another video and I can show you the corn syrup train running at the club one of these days. Thanks for watching.